The Almost Perfect Podcast.
Welcome to the Almost Perfect Podcast, a celebration of fuck ups, failures, and falling flat on your face. This is a podcast that believes you can learn from experience, but that experience doesn't have to be your own. Hi, I'm Bob Perfect, and I'm a functional fuck up. Let's learn from somebody else's mistakes, and today we're learning from Tasmin Naidoo. Now, Tasmin is an illustrator and comic creator, and I absolutely love her work. She's got some chops too. She studied at Michaelis. She did fine art all the way down in Cape Town. But lately these days, she mostly focuses on illustration and creating comics. And she's got an absolutely fantastic comic that I think a lot of you will enjoy. It's called Avocat and his Gaucrocket. It's about an apathetic cat that kind of just watches the world burn around him. And I feel like, the millennials, and not just millennials, well, actually, the kids that come after the millennials, whatever they're called, Gen something or other, might be slightly more posy than millennials. But yeah, if you're a millennial and you like avos and you like cats, well, you're probably going to like Avocat and his Gaucrocket. And if you're just a little bit cynical in general, it's the comic for you. She's only released one issue so far. It's a short comic, but it's got lots of extra things to it. It's lots and lots of little extras, which makes it quite cool. She's also released another comic book called The Rusty Bolt, which we chat about a little bit towards the end of the podcast. And I actually make a mistake. I mentioned like cyberpunk when I mean steampunk, but she explains what the comic is about. I'm not going to ruin it for you, but I just thought I'd mention that. I also made another mistake. What was it? Oh yeah, in this one I mention Chuck Law when I mean Chuck Jones, which is a big difference. Chuck Law is a sitcom creator, which obviously that's why his name's in my head there. But Chuck Jones was the dude who created a lot of cool cartoons back in the day, and I mentioned that because there's this really cool podcast called The Rule of Three, and they had Phil Jupitus on it. And he mentioned Chuck Jones. Well, the whole thing is about Chuck Jones, so go check that out. But Tasmin and I do chat about that in the podcast. So yeah, I made a few mistakes, but you know what? It's called the Almost Perfect Podcast, so I get to get away with them. Yeah, but this is a really cool conversation. I enjoy getting to know Tasmin because I've kind of known her a little bit, like from the outskirts. We've chatted when we're out, and I see her at the cons and stuff like that, and we've interacted quite a lot, and I dig her work. I dig her work so much that I hired her to do the artwork for the Heat City Comedy Festival, actually. She did all the design work for the Heat City Comedy Festival, and I loved it. We got a lot of compliments about it, and I was really stoked about it in general. But yeah, Tasmin's work is just phenomenal. She's really, really good at what she does. And I figured, it'd be cool to get to know her. It'd be cool to get to see who the person is behind the stuff. And it turns out, she's a wonderful weirdo, and I love that we get so many cool, weird people on this podcast who grow up. She grew up like a lot of us. I think a lot of us, judging by the people who hit me up in the DMs and stuff. Grew up a bit of an outcast, and found herself through her art. Found herself through her imagination and her creativity. And nowadays, that's, her life. That's her career. She gets to create things, and she gets to draw, and she gets to, it's a really cool conversation about a lot of different things, about getting to do the things that you want to do, but also having to balance the work-life thing. You guys know all about that. The stuff that you want to do versus the stuff that you have to do for money. And yeah, even stuff like Avocat versus Rusty Bolt is an interesting dynamic because, Tasmin's aware that there's meme potential with something like, Avocat and his Gaucrocket. She knows that there's, that hits into the pop culture zeitgeist quite nicely, whereas her other project, Rusty Bolt, not necessarily as much, whilst it is super dope as well. I actually got that comic a while ago now, and I've just got an Avocat, and they're both phenomenal. So I'm a big fan of Tasmin's work, and I'm looking forward to seeing how she grows, and how her career grows, how her work grows, how she gets out there more. We get into the con life, into what it's like as a creator here in South Africa, selling your work at Comic Cons, not just, the Comic Con, but Fan Con, Icon, and all the various cons that are around South Africa. We also talk about how it's all grown, like how there weren't any of these things when we were growing up, and now there's lots of cool ways to interact with the art, and like for artists themselves to actually exhibit and to be seen and to sell their work. There's a big self-publishing community in the comic world in South Africa, and so yeah, those are all the kinds of things that we get into on this podcast. I'm sure you're going to enjoy that quite a lot. Yeah, Comic-Con was absolutely dope. I picked up a few local comic books, and I'm going to try and, as time goes on, get in touch with the different creators. I picked up a lot of different business cards and that, and, it's something that interests me, man. I'm super into comics and just nerd culture in general, and I feel like, that's not really tapped into in podcasts in South Africa that much. Not quite the way I do it, I guess. And so I'm going to definitely try and get different kinds of artists, as well as, the musicians and actors and all, you know what this podcast is about. It's not just about one type of thing. So I want to try and cater to as many different people as possible. And these are the things that I really, get a kick out of. I really enjoy chatting about these things. I really enjoy, just discussing Batman and the Joker endlessly, because it's something that's come up a few times before on this podcast. I want to give a big shout out. We've got a new patron on the Patreon, Alex Bailovich. I'm going to go with Bailovich, yes. Alex Bailovich. Shout outs to you, man. Thank you for signing up to the Patreon account. Last week, I gave a little plea. I asked the peeps out there. I was like, yo, I need to get this other microphone fixed. And I really fucking do. But we'll get there. And, you guys can help me do that by signing on to the Patreon account. We're also doing a giveaway this month. Last month we did a 250 Rand voucher to HQ Gaming. This month I'm giving away not the Rusty Bolt. I'm giving away a copy of Avocat and his Gaucrocket, and also one of Luke Mulver's comics. I'm giving away one of his Sunday Slave comic books, and I think also there'll be a bunch of little stickers and extra things from the two of them to be given away to patrons, but not just to patrons, to people who also help me out by going over to the iTunes / Apple Podcast, whichever one you want to go to, because apparently they're two different things, some fucking how. But yeah, you can go over to those, and you just need to leave a comment. That's all you need to do, any comment. And then you screenshot that, and you send that to me, either via the social medias, or you can do it via the email, almostperfectpod@gmail.com. You can also go almost_podcast at Twitter. Facebook is the Almost Perfect Podcast, and I am on Instagram, and I'm doing a thing, blah, 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 blah. If you've listened to other podcasts, you know that there's no content on it at the moment, but there will eventually be content there. But you can get in touch with me there. So that's Almost Perfect Podcast there. So yeah, go to iTunes or Apple thing, leave a review, take a screenshot, send that to me. There we go. You're entered into the podcast. You're entered into the podcast. No, you're entered into the competition. Alternatively, just sign up to the Patreon. Just give me your money, yo. Give me that money. And you'll be able to get into that competition just without doing anything. Plus, you'll be able to suggest guests. You'll be able to ask guests questions. And just get involved in the podcast, in the behind the scenes things. You'll get to know about different guests ahead of time sometimes. Sometimes you won't. Sometimes I kind of, things happen, not last minute, but last minute-ish. And so I don't always get that on the Patreon. But I am going to also try to think of other ways to, make cool things for the Patreon account, make it work in that. And I know I chat about it a lot on here at the moment because obviously that's a thing I'm trying to grow so that I can make this thing more of a job than it is at the moment, because at the moment it's side project territory, and I don't want it to be side project territory. I want it to be main project territory, and you can help me do that. So if you dig the podcast, go on over to the Patreon account. And how's this for an incentive? When we get to 20 patrons, I won't mention the Patreon account for at least a month, an entire month, okay? 31 days. Doesn't matter which month, we're going with 31 days from the time that we get to 20 patrons on the Patreon account. then I'm never, not never, no, not never. That's not going to sustain me. But then I'm not going to mention the Patreon for at least a month. Sound like a good thing? I think that would be a good thing for all of us involved. So yeah, other than that, other than me trying to hit you up for money, I feel a bit like a carny here. So yeah, that's that. That's everything you need to know for now about the Almost Perfect podcast. You'll also see at the moment, I am actually a little bit more active on the social media side of things when it comes to the Almost Perfect podcast. So you can hit me up there. You can send us stuff, tag the podcast, share the podcast. Let me know that you're sharing it, and then I can share you, and then, we're like can just, I don't know how the thing works on Twitter anymore. Like, I don't know if retweeting people matters, if it's a incentive or something. But, you can tag me on things and I might retweet it. And yeah, I would also just appreciate if you share the podcast. Guess that's all the promo stuff out the way. That's all the, introductory stuff out the way. I guess it's time for us now to get to know Tasmin Naidoo. In her own words, here it comes. It's the Almost Perfect podcast with Tasmin Naidoo. So how you living, Tasmin?
I'm good. How are you, Bob?
I'm pretty good. It's been a cool week. I've actually been looking forward to this chat because I don't actually really know you that well. We've hung out a bit over the years, out at the pub and that, but it's always at the pub over a few drinks, just talking about
very few drinks. Well, a lot of drinks actually.
Yeah, very few, many few drinks. It's always been quite fun. I've always been. I like your opinions, I like your vibe, I like your work, so
thank you.
I'm stoked to finally get you here. Recently you were at Comic-Con.
Yes, I chose not to, it was a little bit of a mistake on my part, but I didn't get my own stall, but I just kind of had a little bit of Luke's. I convinced him to let me put myself on his table, which was cool.
Luke Mulver,
yes, my partner in crime and comics. And yeah, it was a great con. I really enjoyed it.
Did you do last year's Comic-Con?
I did, but last year I also just helped him. I didn't have any of my stuff available, but he was in a lot of panels. I assumed he was going to be in more panels this time too. So, and it's just really, it's a bit difficult to try to go for a panel and then you're stressed about your stall. So I was like, don't worry, dude, I got you. This year there weren't as many panels with local guys, so he was at the stall as much as I was. So
it's also, I guess, there's more local guys, to rotate essentially over the years.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But how did you find this year's con in comparison to last year's con?
I think there were a lot of things that they had improved. I know that it's small things, but the artists' exhibitor badges.
Yeah.
They weren't completely useless and didn't break as soon as you tried to put them on. And also the venue is amazing compared to last year.
Yeah, that's the one thing I heard from everyone, that the venue
was really awful last year. It was at Kyalami Racecourse and it was just really spread out and, disastrous. And the artist alley was in this big tent. And it was really windy.
Yeah.
It felt like it was going to just blow away. And it was hot and stuff. But yeah, this year was really, really great. It was a lot bigger and there were so many more people and it was just insane. But it was in the best possible way. The one thing I think was the food. The food was awful. I don't know if you ever had any of that food, but it was just...
I had the chicken wrap, which was pretty decent. But
the rest chicken wraps? Oh.
Well, it depends on where you... There were multiple food sections. There was also a pizza section. Did you not...
I got so sick from that pizza.
Okay, I had one slice of pizza at the one place. It was pretty decent. But my trick, because of all the lines, was I just left the venue and went to the restaurant, outside. Because there was the cafe, just across the road. They had, dope breakfast stuff and, coffee. And then there was a Indian food place down the road, so some of us walked down there. Yeah.
Okay, well that's definitely what I'm going to be doing next year, because eventually we just brought our own food, or we went out for dinner afterwards. But
yeah, for me the lines were definitely not a good time. I'm not about that life. I hate that. That's why I would recommend if anyone's gonna go to Comic-Con next year, go on the last day. The last day is the best day, unless you want to see like the biggest names on the stage and stuff.
The last day is the most chilled because you can also take your time to like look at everything and like, you know, you're not like rushed from stall to stall. Like, yeah, you just have more time for everything.
Yeah, it's such a dope vibe. And also, like, from a consumer standpoint, there's also a lot of discounts and stuff because people don't necessarily want to take all their stock back home with them, all the creators and stuff. So, yeah, you can get some really good specials and really good deals. Like,
absolutely. Some good deals from both the local creators and also, like, some of the bigger, like, merch stores. Like, they have these crazy sales on like a bunch of their things, ranging from plushies to comics. Like, it's pretty cool.
There's also like a cool, like, as a creator, you guys like trade a lot of stuff.
Yeah, on the last day we all like trade because like essentially if you've got a comic that's a similar price to someone else, and we try to like all have the same kind of price range for our stuff.
Especially for local stuff.
Local stuff, yeah, which is all self-produced and self-published and stuff. So on the last day we all just kind of go and like sign each other's comics and like, you know, it's kind of like the last day of school.
Yeah.
You know, like you like trading comics and artworks, and it's really lovely. Yeah.
So like a cool camaraderie builds over the course of the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, like you get to know people. Well, one, like we talked about a bit earlier, like one side of these people, and like they become like your convention family because you've been sitting with them and sweating with them and like, you know,
covering each other's
stalls and moaning or like laughing with or like sleeping under the tables and, you know, with all these people. So yeah, you do form really strong bonds that kind of carries to the next cons as you go along.
And you get to see like different people at each con and that. But like was this the biggest con you guys have ever done?
Yeah, in terms of comics, like I was privileged enough to go to DEF CON in Las Vegas a couple years ago, so that was like the biggest con I've ever been to. But this, in terms of comics, yes, absolutely.
And so into the South Africa.
And like, South Africa, yeah, it's amazing how big it was.
Did it surprise you like that? Yeah, like something, because it surprised the fuck out of me, like to see that many people there. Like genuinely, on the first day there were like over 60,000 people there, and I was like, "There's no way they're gonna pull 60,000 people." I mean, you know, big bands don't even pull like that. Like, you know, big artists, Tasmin Naidoo, you know, like struggled like to pull 60,000 people. So, yeah, like I was quite surprised that there were that many people who were into this like kind of thing. So did it surprise you at all?
I guess I was a little bit more prepared because I'd been to the first one.
It wasn't as big.
Yeah, and I mean, like they sold out a few of the days on the last year's event as well. So I did kind of expect it to be that big, but like it's still like nothing really prepares you to see that many people, like walls of people just kind of like passing you by.
Do you feel like you're in a bit of a fishbowl like situation?
Yes, absolutely. Or like in the middle of like some sort of zombie horde and people are like everything.
Oh man, and like you must get like actually, since you've done quite a few cons now, do you know when someone's gonna buy something or when they're not? Like,
no, it's really frustrating actually because sometimes you get we actually like the one girl at FanCon actually had a FanCon bingo and she had like various things. So the one was
people
like,
say, I'm coming back later.
Yeah, like I'm coming back later, or
people never believe me when I say that. And then I do come back later. They're
because
always
we
surprised.
Always hear that, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm never gonna see that guy again.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes some of you aren't gonna see me again later, but some of you are because I'm doing calculations.
It is like it's better than like, you know, like the certain people also like come and like read your entire comic and then leave. Say thank you and then leave, and they don't buy anything, and that for me is like way worse etiquette.
It's kind of like stealing, like in a
yeah,
weird way.
It is. Like a friend of mine actually sellotaped the last few pages of his comic shut so that people could, and had a little sign there saying, if you want to read any more, you gotta buy it. Yeah. That's it.
Because you don't want to be rude, I guess. Like, you don't want to just say to someone, like, hey, can you stop reading my comic book? Like,
Yeah, I mean, like, my comic is also only 6 pages long, so, you know.
but you've got a lot of, yeah, for the story, of course, but there's a lot of other visual elements that, like.
Yeah, well, with Avocat, like, I kind of marketed it as a zine slash, like, adventure book slash art book, sort of amalgamation of all those things. So there's, like, a lot of art, a lot of, like, little puzzles and, like, you know, mystery things that I've hidden in there, and a lot of, like, little prompts that I've kind of dropped in that I'm going to carry on with the next issues, but I'm definitely not going to be printing it in the same format. It's probably going to be a bit longer with, like, a more of a story arc, which I've already started doing.
But, like, I mean, how come this one is so short? And then, did you do the extra stuff just to fill the pages, or do you enjoy, like, that kind of thing of making the product like a zine, like making it more of that than just a comic?
I really did like the element of making it like a zine, and also, like, I really love drawing locations and stuff. I like to draw places that I'd actually like to go and, like, dive into.
Looking at your website, I can kind of see that. Yeah.
So, like, I wanted to create something, and I didn't really know where I was going with Avocat. Avocat started off as a 4-panel, like, kind of very pessimistic kind of little comic, and it grew in popularity. I'm pretty sure because of the name Avocat and his Gaucrocket.
Yeah, pretty good name, and also, like, you got some skills. You can draw.
But, like, yeah, so I think, like, it kind of, like, I had to do something like this first book so that I could go on further, because I had to get all the stuff out of my mind and kind of figure out the world, and now I feel comfortable with, like, doing a longer form of a narrative, you know.
Yeah, so what is the world? Like, it's not just Avocat destroying everything anymore. Like,
no, actually, Avocat's never actually destroyed anything. He's
well, he saved the world. I saw the fire. Oh, he was ambivalent. That was the thing. He didn't save anyone. That was it. But the world was on fire.
The world was on fire, and he was like, you know what? Sometimes you gotta let things happen this way.
I take it you're in quite an apathetic stage of your life when you came up with that, or
yeah, I'm actually I really do like pessimism.
But are you pessimistic?
I don't think so. I think it's a very interesting philosophy. Like, I'm a huge fan of, like, Tom Ligotti, and, you know.
I don't know Tom Ligotti. I don't think
He was who. Have you watched True Detective?
Oh yeah.
You know, Rust Cole. His whole, like, kind of vibe was based on, like, the writings of Tom Ligotti and a few other people, like
I probably wouldn't like know his stuff.
He's written this brilliant book called The Conspiracy Against the Human Race, and
that does sound familiar.
You can download it, and it's basically, it just talks about how, you know, consciousness is actually a really shit thing to happen to us.
I agree 100%.
Yeah,
like,
you would actually love this book then. Like,
yeah.
I'll send you.
Yeah, no, like, I don't want to have kids because I feel like putting consciousness onto, like, another human being is just, like, a really fucked up thing. Like,
yeah. Well, I guess I also got that vibe from your comedy show, your solo.
So, the end of the world. Yeah, like, well, that's not so much the consciousness, that's just so much the experience. But even just the moral question of, like, you know, should we create another conscious being? Like, it's a big one, man, because you don't know what that person's gonna go through.
Essentially, like, my understanding of, like, life, and it's mostly suffering. I mean, like, unless you're really, really privileged and, like, I don't know, you been born in, like,
I don't know if it's mostly suffering. I mean, then you're saying mundane is just suffering. Like, I think it's mostly boring with suffering. Like,
there's a lot of suffering. I think there's a lot of suffering. I mean, like, even
but I think people who are suffering don't like, unless, like, there is suffering from true poverty and, like, true suffering. a lot of people who we might consider to be suffering are actually like sometimes, you know, mentally like happier than like the middle classes.
That's true. But like in my mind, it's like it's more difficult for me to be consistently happy than it is to be just like, you know, gripped with this like, but what is it all for? You know, like, why would anyone want to procreate? Why would anyone want to actually exist now? Like, when you look around at like all the things that are going on, and you're like, everything sucks, man.
That's a weird thing. I feel like being a kid at this time is like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Because you got all the best toys, all the best
toys,
games, technology, everything. Like, you got VR, man. Like, you're growing up with like virtual reality games. Like, that is awesome. That was my dream as a kid. But also, you might not live past 50.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
But I mean, I might not live past 50, so who knows?
These are the things that plague me. Well, they don't really plague me anymore.
They plague Avocat a little bit.
Yeah, I think I channel it all into Avocat and let him deal with it because he's more equipped and he's more, you know.
He's a little bit of a bastard though.
Is
Avocat a he? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's actually based on my cat, Salem.
I would assume so. Yes.
My little buddy. He's been with me for 6 years, and he is.
Salem's gotten some shout-outs in comic books. And
yes. I tend to dedicate most of my work to Salem because he's been my little like companion, you know. Like, and I love him. He's like the closest thing to a child I'd ever have.
That's been like the biggest like hardest thing about like moving here, because I've like my cat's moved in with my mom, like because couldn't take cats here. Loki, yeah. And like as a freelancer who lives alone and works at home, that's Tasmin, by the way.
Sorry.
No, don't even apologize. I'm just giving the context for people. It ain't me. No, but like that's literally one of the things that like has been difficult, is just like not having Loki around. Like, and Loki's a little bastard. Like, not a great cat. Like I love her, but like, you know,
she's
other
a bit
people.
Of a dick.
Yeah, not even just a bit, just complete and utter. Like, but that's, you know, her vibe. Like, and that's cool. Like, I respect it. But just having her around was so nice, you know, just having a cat to talk to.
Someone to come home to, even though I live with Luke too, but like, you know, like Salem's always there to like, you know, just
not argue with you. Not fuck up your vibe, like.
Well, Salem
actually,
kind of fucks my vibe up because like, if he's like trying to play with me, I think he also thinks of me as his like playmate, because I got him when he was only 3 weeks old. So I don't think he really associates me with being his mom, more like his playmate.
And you're also probably not very assertive with him, are you?
Well, I tried to be, but he's so cute. I mean, you just go to look at those little bean toes. So he'll like come and tackle me, and he plays like he's a huge cat. He scares dogs away. Like, you know, he's huge. He's huge, and he shrieks if he's not happy, and he like tackles me down, and like, you know, I've got scars all over my body from my little sweet boy.
So you've channeled all of this into a comic book.
Yeah.
Avocat, and it was Gaucrocket. So why Avos? Why like are you just a big fan of Avos, or were you
not
like
even really?
Were you like pop culture? Like, this is gonna, like...
I don't know, I think it might have been like, okay, well this would like sell a lot of, because people like cats and people like Avos.
So it was fully corporate.
Well, no, well, part of it. And also like at the time I found this the most perfect Avo, and you know when you find that Avo, and I lifted it up in the air, and my cat happened to be like, you know, kind of sitting like just in the room.
And it just looked like
it just looked like it would work together. But I mean, there have also been like lots of iterations of cats sitting in Avos all over the internet. So
really?
It's not. Yeah, there's like tons of little. Like, it's a thing.
I didn't know it was a thing.
But there's no other.
Gaucrocket.
Yeah.
Which is what Avocat travels Earth in for now.
Well, he travels all over the universe, and
does he?
yeah, he does.
I haven't yet. You've gifted me with your full comic now, so I'm pretty keen because I've only really seen the stuff that you've got online, and then a few things like when like at the different cons, like
Yeah.
I'll see what you've like put out, and so I've got an understanding of the universe a little bit.
Well, it's kind of it's grown into something like that because I really like adventure and like, you know, I'm also a huge horror fan, but like adventure, like
There's no
with
real
my
horror
art.
in there.
well, there will be. I'm
Ooh,
trying to
well,
write some stuff in.
Are we doing a horror Avocat comic?
Yes, that might be coming next, but like
That sounds awesome.
But you know, there's almost like an Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
kind
that's
of type.
very much what I feel.
Yeah. So there's a lot of like, you know, exploring and like figuring things out, and that's what Avocat and his companion Crate Cat, who's based on another cat I know called Tigger. And they're like crazy adventures. My plan is to like actually put all of our animals that we have like in my comic. I don't want to have any people because I don't like people, so
That makes sense. And how things been going in terms of like Avocat and Gaucrocket? Has it like, you know, are sales ever
Yeah.
increasing, or like how is the whole like, you know, having to sell your comic books like at a con kind of thing? Like
at a con they do really well. I think like, you know, people see this ridiculous, absurd kind of comic and they're like, okay, I didn't know comics could do that.
yeah, I guess,
You know, and then
guess
like
so.
they pick it up and it's like, it's very, it makes people smile, but there's also this like darker kind of undertone to my work that, you know, you could pick up or you know.
Is there,
don't
is there any
necessarily-
Garfield like involved in Avocat?
No,
No.
I wouldn't say Garfield. I guess like in some way like
It's quite cynical, but
Yeah.
not quite as quippy. Not quite
yeah, like Garfield is also like, you must remember, confined to about 4 panels.
Of course, but like, you know,
So,
Garfield's four
he's
panels,
got, like-
four panels, like over a long period
He's
of
got
time.
a lot of like condensed cynicalism.
Yeah, whereas Avocat gets to be spread out over a
Yeah,
whole like 6
so-
pages, I guess.
So I
Okay.
guess Garfield does in some way. He probably does inform me in some subconscious level.
Like, you know,
How could it not?
Avo is Avocat's lasagna essentially.
Oh yes, there's a food element. Yeah, okay, I like that.
But how did you get into all of this? How did you get into creating comics? Because you were telling me like just now you studied fine art. Like, so how do you go from studying, you know, fine art? Was it always a thing you were into? Like you've always loved comics and that's why you got into studying fine art, or?
Well, I'd have to go back into my past if you don't mind.
Well, we can do that. That's kind of a bit of a thing that we do here on the podcast.
So I was born in Pietermaritzburg, and when
I'm
I was
sorry.
about, I know, thank you. When I was about 2, my family moved to Greytown.
Cool.
So I actually grew up in Greytown. I'm a country gal.
Yeah, great. I
Um,
used to go to school in Wartburg. So
No way!
Yeah. Yeah, I went to boarding school there when I was young.
Oh,
so-
that's crazy. I went to Hermansburg.
Okay, that's right there as
I
well.
had no idea. Crazy. But so I grew up in Greytown, and I was always like, I've always loved cartoons and I loved drawing, and you know, I had a grandfather who is an artist,
Okay.
a carpenter, but also an artist. Like he used to paint the back of buses, you know, like those ridiculous
Fuck yes.
tigers and
Yes.
sunsets and stuff. He used to do that sort of thing.
That's so dope.
He was like quite a Renaissance man, and he was quite eccentric. So he'd like, you know, pitch up at our house with like a box of chicks, like all these little baby chicks, or like
Okay.
a guinea pig. We just like, we'd always have animals in our house, and we actually had quite a fairy tale upbringing, because we were like, you know, these barefoot, wild-haired kids, like always rescuing birds and nursing them back to health, or like playing with chameleons. in
That
the
sounds like a
garden.
great town existence.
Yeah, it was amazing. And yeah, but I was always like kind of weird person even back then. Like I used to
Even by
read-
those standards.
even by those standards, I used to read a lot, so like I was
Oh
constantly
yeah, that's big weird when you're young.
yeah. I'd read so much that like sometimes I'd get into trouble with my parents because we'd be on holiday or something and they'd be like, can you please stop reading and join in with the family?
But those worlds, like, that's the thing, like, you're in, like, especially when you're young and you're reading, like, you're in, like, a whole new universe, a whole new world, and it's so much better than, like, your own family.
Yeah.
Like, other people's families in books are so much either cooler or worse, and, like, it's just...
Like, you know, the fact that, you know, you can go and, like, fly up into the clouds with the Dragon King or whatever. Like,
yeah.
I mean, so, but, yeah, my parents were actually, strangely enough, for an Indian kind of conservative family. Well, they're not actually that conservative.
But I'm sure they would have encouraged the reading.
They did, just
but
not...
the material.
Like, they were a bit concerned about me with regards to me socializing.
Okay.
I wasn't a very social person, like, from a very early age. I had friends, but it was like, you know. And as I grew up, I found it even more difficult. And when we moved to Durban, it was even worse because all of a sudden
because you're an outsider from Maritzburg and like...
Well, from Greytown, even
yeah.
worse. And then like I come in like I'm trying to integrate into a school like Durban Girls College.
Oh wow.
Which was excruciating. It was like awful.
Because college is such a like just mainstream fucking like not even mainstream, like it's upper class like hoity-toity like bullshit. Like,
I mean, like coming from a person who used to spend almost every weekend on like farms and like catching chameleons and whatever, to come and like, you know, be belittled for not knowing what Gucci is or a GHD or whatever, like, you know, it was like a huge shock, and it sent me down into a very dark space because I battled a lot with trying to make friends and trying to like actually find my place in the world.
But like, did you feel like at least you had, you know, books to go to?
Oh yeah. Books and my art, and like I'm really grateful for my art department.
Drawing from a young age?
Oh yeah, since I was a kid. Like, I mean, I remember my grandfather even trying to teach me maths, like simple maths, and like all I do is like make all the numbers into little characters instead of actually doing the sums.
See, like I was good at maths, and I wish like I would like I've never been good at like visual arts. Like I can take a photo, but like everything else I'm just like not like don't have the hand-eye coordination.
No.
It's practice.
It is practice, and it's like a muscle. So I mean, like any creative thing is like a muscle. You just have to be interested in it enough
to do it
and to exercise that muscle.
So I guess like I wish I had the ability, but I don't want to put in the work. So.
Yeah. Well, see, there it is. I think like that was my escapism from like, you know, being quite socially weird, and I guess I'm still a bit socially weird, and you know, not being able to fit in anywhere ever, and always feeling like an imposter. Like drawing was definitely like my kind of like I'd always think at least I can go home and draw.
Yeah.
You know, at least if people are bullying me or whatever, at least I could go home and draw, or at least I could like go and read this book that they haven't even begun to comprehend. So
yeah, like reading for me was definitely like my escape in a big way when I was younger, because I was bullied a lot as well at school, and like I became a library monitor.
Oh wow,
and, like,
that's cool.
Yeah, so it was a cool escape from like just everyone. I could just go chill in the library at breaks. And, like,
yes, I did very similar things.
yeah, like, and yeah, it was dope to A, just, you know, have that space, and B, like just have these different worlds and have these like cool, like you learn so much like without ever, you know, leaving the house essentially. Like that's what I love about like comic books. It's what I love about books. It's what I love about just sharing of worlds, you know, like we're sharing that creative experience. And like it's also though from the other side, from a creator like side, do you ever like think about the impact your work will have like on people?
I do, but yeah, like I guess like in this day and age there is like a bit of, and I don't know if I'm gonna get in trouble for this, but like there's a little bit of there's a kind of like unsaid pressure on me to reference the fact that I'm female and I'm a person of color and I'm into comics, but like, you know, I've always existed on the fringe. I've never really been part of any like social groups, so I think it would be very
like even the POC, even the female like thing, like you don't want to be like
I think it would be very inauthentic if I had to suddenly just start talking about that. So my work definitely just talks about the fringelings, as I like to call it, like the people that are like kind of left out of the, you know, main stuff, and they just do their own thing because that's what we do. So yeah, I do think a lot about my impact, and I hope that, you know, my work actually just is inspirational to young people to know that they can actually make whatever the hell they want to make, and that's okay, you know.
I feel you. See, I was thinking more just like the other side of things, with actual like content, like
Sorry.
no, like you know, because the Joker films just come out, so I haven't seen it yet. But you know, everyone, well, not everyone, like people are like it's the best movie ever. Other people are like, how can this movie be made? And so there's just this big debate at the moment about, you know, art. I mean, there has been for the last few years, I guess, about, you know, what's art's actual impact and how much responsibility does the artist have for the impact of their art. So I was just wondering what your thoughts are.
I think that if you like the Joker movie, I haven't watched it either, but honestly,
I'm keen to.
Me too. I think it looks amazing, and I'm very excited for it. And it reminds me a bit of the Alan Moore book called The Killing Joke.
Yeah,
which
was fucking dark.
Dark as shit.
But I enjoyed it.
But like, the thing is, like, you know, a character like the Joker is in public, it is in the collective consciousness. We know about Joker. We know what he's all about. This is like a character study. It's not an aspirational movie of what you should or should not do. And I think like that annoys me because, like, you know, people should be able to make that distinction and to say, okay, well, this is a beautiful story. It's not like black and white, this is right and this is wrong. It's like there's so many gray areas to it, and that's okay. And
but do you think people are losing the fact that that's what art is? Like, or that's what
I
it's
think
meant
so,
to be?
definitely. I mean, even the fact that we're having this debate, then I think the director of the
Todd Phillips.
he actually
I think I
referenced-
disagree with some of the shit he's been saying lately, but
well, I don't know what he's been saying, but like
just
as
about
a purely
woke culture,
just
meaning that he can't tell jokes anymore, essentially.
oh, okay, well, yeah, okay, that's slightly problematic, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't make like
A great film.
a great film and a
You
great
can say stuff I
character
disagree with, and I can still enjoy your work.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. And I mean, like, he did say something about how we all kind of worship John Wick, who's also a very similar kind of character. He's been like, you know, gone through his traumas and blah blah blah, but he just like literally, he's got 3 movies where he's just like literally going around killing people.
Yeah, just the way he's framed is as, you know, a vigilante good guy.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
he's the Batman, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
So
not,
it's
but whereas the Joker as a character, like, I think, I mean, I haven't seen the movie, so I can't comment really, but like, I think it might be a bit different than the way it's always been, in that the Joker's always just been the, you know, the funhouse mirror of Batman.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
very much
it's just
so.
saying they're the same guy.
Yeah.
Like, that's always been the criticism. That's always been
Yeah.
the thing that they've always said with the Joker is
Yeah.
Batman is just the guy who's doing the same thing as a good guy, like, essentially.
Because if you actually break it down, Batman is a really like, I mean, he is a nutcase.
He's a
like,
psychopath.
He is a psychopath. Like, he goes around, like, okay, granted, he doesn't kill people. But he
Well, it depends on...
Well, the early iterations of Batman, I guess, he used to carry a gun, but like the later iterations...
But it's also, I mean, even just the movies, like, you know, like, stuff that he does definitely kills people.
True.
There's definitely...
But I mean, like, he's still, like, this multi-millionaire who's decided to put his money towards donning this suit and
space travel even, like in the Justice League, like in the comics and stuff.
The
Like
Justice League is
the
a
dude
different
like
kettle.
builds like a whole like space like thing, and it's just like, yeah, this is this is just our thing up here. Like we can just chill up here. And like in orbit, no stress, because I'm a billionaire. Like we funneling. Look, how's this money? That's also the thing with Bruce Wayne. How is all this money being kept off the fucking books?
I don't know.
All this bad technology is somehow the dude's like,
I don't know.
mad. There must be some mad tax issues there. He's
No, well,
grabbing-
not in the States. They kind of let those things slide.
He's in the Cayman Islands, yeah. That would be an interesting Batman book. The
Actually, they
finances
do-
of Batman. The
I would
economics.
definitely read that. There is actually a comic that came out, I think, in the last 2 years or something, about how they've switched the roles completely. So Batman, as a white privileged millionaire, is actually the bad guy, and the Joker is actually
As a
the
working
good
class
guy,
hero.
as a working class hero. Which I haven't read it yet, but
I mean,
and I don't know.
that's why I get Joker as like a problematic character, in that like too many people like relate to him as like a
Yeah.
bad guy. Like, like he's never been an anti-hero. Like he's not an anti-hero. He's just a villain.
He's a villain.
Just a straight up villain.
But he's also like, he's got those
Charismatic
cartoonish kind of elements, but he's also got those sympathetic. It's like, I don't know if you've ever watched Star Trek Deep Space Nine,
I don't know if I have. No, I don't
but
think
there's this brilliant
I
character.
can't remember which Star Trek I've seen. Like
yeah,
it used to be
there's so
on SABC
Yeah.
like back in the day.
But there's this brilliant character called Ducat. He's a Kardashian, and Kardashian. I always get this wrong. Well, either one works. Which is like this reptilian kind of race,
Yeah.
and their planet kind of occupied another planet called Bejor, in a kind of like Palestinian Israeli / Holocaust kind of and he is a great villain because he does not think that he is a villain.
Yeah.
He thinks that what he is thinking and his like ideology is right.
I mean, that's kind of been what Marvel's done with Black Panther, and then also
Oh
with-
yeah, I guess. I
But-
only just watched Black Panther. I need to still. I don't really know much about superhero stuff, so bear with me here.
We'll get into that actually just now. That's pretty cool. But yeah, like Black Panther and even Thanos,
Well,
like-
actually, Killmonger, Luke even said this,
Yeah.
and he actually thinks that Killmonger is quite a sympathetic and cool character. Like,
yeah, he is. Like
he wanted to give all that power to the world so that. Am I getting this right?
to a degree, but at the same time, like, well, that was what he said, but at the same time, the way people enact things and the actual consequences of their actions are also
Yeah.
like his motivations to a degree were partially like
Noble.
excusable,
Okay.
like noble to.
Yeah.
Not, I don't know if noble is correct, but excusable.
Excusable. Let's
is-
go with
Is
excusable.
definitely there, but yeah, like I mean, it critiqued a lot of the Black Panther, well, not the Wakandan way of life and everything, and like he had good points. It's the same thing as like Thanos to a degree, but it's like if you're like looking at like I don't know, people like obsess over Thanos these days as like this ultimate villain, and like he was so considered and this and that. It's like no, he's a fucking idiot. Like
I don't know. I haven't.
sorry,
watched,
you
I'm
haven't seen
sorry.
it. That's
But
totally
like,
fine.
I am going to watch all the. I've watched, I think, the first Avenger movie.
So like I just did the
It's
thing
beautiful.
that I'm gonna.
It's a beautiful movie.
I just did the thing that I'm gonna like ask you a question about. But as a comic creator, do people automatically expect you to know everything about superheroes?
Yes. Honestly, I don't, and I've never actually been like really into superheroes. I like the darker kind of like
Well, you mentioned Killing
the
Joke.
Killing
like,
Joke.
So I assume the Batman in general, like your
Batman
Dark
is
Knight
like
stuff.
yeah, and I like Neil Gaiman's writing on like Batman.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, like I've
I mean, I
actually
assume you
even bought
enjoyed
one.
Sandman then.
Yeah, I like Sandman. I like probably my favorite comic is probably something that no one's ever heard of. It's called Like a Velvet Glove Cast in Iron. It's
Okay.
by a guy called Dan Clowns, Clowes, sorry. Just thinking about the Joker. Dan Clowes, and he's a resident of Oakland, California.
Okay.
And he is quite possibly my favorite comic artist and writer, because he writes such strange comics. Like, I'll lend you this book. It's so weird, but it's also got its own like kind of. It's just like the weirdest thing I've ever read and picked up, and I just loved it so much. I've read it like every time I pick it up and read it, and I do this routinely. I like have to stop myself from like reading it again, straight afterwards. It's one of those books.
Wow.
So it really had like when I was in college, and going back to college and schooling and stuff, fine art, my school.
I was actually going to ask you about it just now.
I studied at Michaela's School of Fine Arts, part
Down
of
in Cape
UCT.
Town, yeah.
And they had
very, very good school for people, like, well, in terms of
fine art.
Fine art.
Not
like,
in terms of people like me. Like, I don't know how I actually got through that school. But
really?
they did have...
So why did you go to for fine art?
Honestly, like, I really had no idea what I wanted to do after college, after high school.
You just knew you wanted to be artistic.
I just wanted to be artistic, and I think I had a very naive sense of what art and being an artist was. And I kind of jumped to the first kind of thing that I thought I'd enjoy, and when I went there, I realized
Fine art sucks.
Yeah, it really, really almost destroyed me. It was also really dark. My high school and my college years were like the worst years of my life, because they were just so dark, and like I couldn't find my feet. And
sounds about right. High school was horrible for me.
High school was, yeah, it's a horror. Children are fuckers. It's just like awful people.
And also just the school structure and the school system
and the school structure
creates like this vibe. Like, I mean, life in general creates the vibe of like, like, do I belong here? Like, because the structures are so confining. Like something like Michaela's, I can imagine for you, could be very rigid. Like, even though it's not meant to be. Like, other people might find it's like this cool place where they learn to express themselves.
Some people thrived. I just wasn't that kind of person. I also, like, my art style was just not conducive to
to fine art.
Fine art at all. Like, I'm an illustrator. I don't consider myself an artist, really. I try to always say I'm a graphic artist or I'm an illustrator because of my time at Michaela's.
Yeah.
But the one great thing was we had really amazing theory lecturers, and one lecturer did this whole, like, for I think a term, we did a thing on comics. And we went through, like, South African comics and, like, bitter comics.
Like,
that was, like,
would
really...
be the one. And then... Like,
that was really big at one stage.
Did they go through, like, the stuff from the 80s and that? Just, like...
A little bit.
The dirty shit.
Yeah, there was some, like, really gross, like,
yeah,
awful stuff. But that was, like, one of the things that really opened my eyes. And then...
But the comics is fucking, for South Africa, so important. And, like,
It is. It really is.
We'll maybe get into that just now.
So then, in my Michaela's library, the Michaela's library, they also had the most amazing comic book section, and it was something that I'd never seen. I mean, this is like a girl from, Greytown, in the middle of nowhere, where I was only exposed to the occasional Archie or Tintin, or sometimes...
So you only got into comics, like...
Well, I was always interested in comics, even growing up, and, like, we'd go to CNA or whatever, and, like, PNA, I don't even think we had a CNA. And
well,
I'd
CNA
get, like...
bought out, like, that Italian store or something. Like, I've still got a bunch of comics where, like, where CNA used to have these bins where you get like $5 comics.
Yeah. So I would go and like just grab all of these things. Like I think I could get like an Archie for like R1 a piece or something. And my dad, I only found out much later, my dad was actually a huge comic book nerd when he was growing up. So he came from a really poor upbringing, and he'd have to do a paper route to subsidize his family income. His father was disabled, so he couldn't work, and he would use a tiny portion of their money to buy a comic every week. And he said, like, if he still had that collection, it probably would have been worth so much.
I nearly cried when, okay, well, he's not like my actual grandfather, but he is essentially, once told me that, yeah, he gave away his collection of Spider-Man and Hulk comics. Like, he just literally bought, like, growing up.
Oh no!
Like, into his 20s.
Like, it's probably worth so much.
Like, not even just the, what they're worth, just like, fuck, I want to read them.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to, like, because you said, yeah, if I'd known you liked comic books, I would have given them to you. I was like,
yeah, my dad as well. Because, like, I don't think he really expected, like, he's a doctor. Both my parents were at the time in the medical field, and they didn't expect.
Such an unfortunate stereotype. Like, was there any pressure for you? Like,
no. They kind of like they saw me and they were like, okay, we're just gonna let her do whatever the hell she wants, and
that's cool because you said like they're like a little bit conservative, but
a little
like,
bit conservative in the sense that we weren't allowed to have like boyfriends and cell phones. And,
so typical Indian family.
but my mom was quite the hippie in other regards. Like, she was really into nature. She was really into the garden. She was really into animals. Like, animals also just love my mom. It's weird. But she also was never very religious at the time. Since, like, she's had issues, so now she's, like, actually gone back to her religion. But, so we grew up being, like, kind of half Muslim, half Tamil, but we were raised as being atheists. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
On my dad's side, they were Tamil. My mom's side, they were Muslim, but we were never as a family religious at all. So we were quite unique in a certain way, like that. We weren't ever like forced to be religious at any point in our lives. We tried it out, but it just never felt right. So
I can imagine it must be quite difficult for parents to try and figure out how do we make this thing happen. Like, what do you teach? Like,
what do you teach? Like, I mean, I don't know. It must have been difficult, but I think they were more concerned with like us. They're both very. My parents, they've since divorced, but they're both very much into knowledge and just educating yourself. So I think that was like, that took the place of like, shoving religion down our throats. They just wanted us to like be informed and know things, and whatever we did, do it well, sort of.
So
thing.
they must have been quite happy when you're like, I want to do fan art.
Yeah, they were like, okay, at least she's like settled on something, so, like,
And then, so Michaela's had dope comic books.
Yeah, they had some dope comic books, and I had a few really amazing lecturers, and it really opened my eyes to what comics could actually do, which I was a little bit like, I didn't know what comics could actually do until that point.
Because other than that, you would have like Archie would have been one of the alternative like narrative
Archie, Tintin. My dad used to give me a Tintin every Valentine's Day.
Tintin's still dope. Like I remember growing up.
A bit on the racist side, but like
actually, yeah. I mean, I haven't read Tintin in years, but I remember reading it as a kid.
I mean, I loved Tintin when I didn't really know any better, and I still do. I mean, like, yeah. But it was also like really cool artwork styles.
That's the thing, like,
that was very different.
It's very
to, like,
distinct.
So
and also like, well, actually, what I grew up on, like the thing, like we used to get the annual Beano.
Oh,
like, did you ever like get those, or like
yes,
you ever
I
like
did.
Yeah.
I looked at Beano and Dagwood, I think it was called. Yeah, like, I mean, like, when you got lucky. Like, you'd go into those bargain bins and you'd find something
like
really...
those paperweight stores.
Those paperweight... Oh, yes, yeah. Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
And, like, in high school also, like, I was always interested in comics, but I just didn't have the accessibility. So I think, like, now things are really changing for the better. We're getting more comic book stores all over the country. Like, there's one in
Durban.
There's one in Durban, Kapow, which is amazing, and I highly recommend anyone go and actually have a look there.
Yeah, they're actually pretty decent. I mean, like, even in like pricing and what they offer, like in comparison to Joe Book stores, they're up there.
Yeah, they're
like,
up there.
Like,
I mean,
they don't have as much space or like as much inventory.
Oh, they're moving upstairs now, so they're gonna have a lot more space.
Sick.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean, you know, you go to somewhere like Comic Warehouse where they've got like, maybe you shouldn't talk too much shit, but you know, they've got this name behind them, but you know, what's on offer is the same as everywhere else, and they're like a bit more pricey and stuff like that. Whereas Kapow's like, got like they get all the new stuff in pretty often.
Yeah.
And they've got a decent range of like older stuff as well. So you can find like
the Invisibles. I've seen the Invisibles there. I've seen some Hellboy, like original Hellboys. Like they've got some really, really good stuff actually. And it is a bit
that's
more
rare for Durban.
Like, that is.
To be able to find like comic books like that are like, you know, not just at CNA without the fucking backboards and without like,
it's just like completely like out of.
And you're paying like 120 rand for something that's like you should be paying like 60 to 80 depending. Like
No,
no.
Kapow's amazing, and also like the guy who runs it, Sean, is like a huge comic book fan, and I mean like. That is really cool.
Matters a lot.
Like, I mean, because he's so passionate about it, and it's really, really fucking cool. Like, you just talk to him, and he's got this almost like childlike look in his eye whenever he's talking about comics, and it's so sweet, you know. Like, whereas there are other comic book shop owners that I know from Joburg and Cape Town who are
super cynical.
Yeah, they're cynical because they've had to be. I mean, like, he's coming in at the right time. They've been in the market for so long, and you know, the guy who owns he's like, oh, you know, fuck this. Like, I just wish I never got into this cursed thing, you know.
Oh man, like it's funny because there's I can't remember the name of it, but there was this dope comic store in Edenvale that's closed down, and like that was like my favorite place in the world to like go to, and like now you've got places like Comic Warehouse opening up, and you've got like all these other new stores. Like you got a comic store in Durban, and it's like it's weird, like some stores just missed like, you know, this recent boom. So yeah, it's pretty cool that, you know, all these stores, like Durban has a comic book store, and that like, you know, even in Joburg new stores are popping up, even though some older ones have died, and that, and stuff like Comic-Con, you know, like, because you've obviously seen FanCon grow, you've obviously seen Icon grow, and you've now seen Comic-Con, but did you ever expect it? Like, because growing up, like, we were ostracized, fucked for liking comic books. Like, whether you liked Spider-Man or like you liked Archie, you were a fucking weirdo that like other people didn't fuck with. So now it's like just a mainstream culture. It's just a part, like Disney, the biggest company, like one of the biggest companies in the world, like, you know, is putting out comic book movies constantly, essentially. Yeah, not comic books that you like necessarily, but
I still think we should be a little bit concerned by one corporation like releasing so much. Like, I mean, they've got Star Wars now. They've got like Marvel, I think.
Yeah. They've got Fox.
They've got Fox. I don't think they've got Spider-Man yet, but that might. Like, I think Sony's still got Spider-Man, but
yeah, there's talks. Like there.
But I mean, I think that's a little bit concerning. I won't lie. But yeah, I mean, like it has grown, and it is good, but we just need to also constantly remember that comic book movies are also comic book movies, and we also need to go back to the source and buy comic books, because there's still this booming industry that is still not quite as mainstream as the movies, and often comics aren't actually made to be movies.
No,
you know?
not at all.
And some comics are actually really beautiful just as being a standalone comic. And like, for instance, let's talk about Watchmen.
Yeah.
And Watchmen, I thought the movie was actually pretty good.
I thought the movie was better than the comic, and like, I know I get crucified for saying that.
Oh my god!
But only because of the ending. So obviously the comic is great. Like, it's a 12-book like fucking thing. Like, and it's fantastic throughout the 11 of the books. But it's just the 12th book I don't enjoy.
But they had the whole thing with the, like, all the artists and stuff that were put on the island, and that was so cool. And they were going to like blast that in the middle of New York. For,
okay,
like,
no, that was dope. Like, yeah.
And
no,
Ozymandias's speeches about semantics, like, I mean, it was so beautiful. The book was so beautiful, and I think that
I don't know if I can say I just preferred the ending of the movie to the ending of the book, and I thought the movie was very very good.
The movie was very like Luke. You'll probably disagree.
I think we did disagree about it.
But I really liked the movie. I thought it was like the perfect kind of that is how you do a good comic book.
Have you seen The Boys yet?
No, I haven't.
I haven't me neither.
But with Watchmen, that was like I mean, like for the first scene with the comedian getting thrown out the window. I mean, that was like almost frame by frame the same.
It was the comic. Yeah,
it was the comic. So I think
Sin City also did very well with that.
Yeah, well, the first one. I'm not too sure about A Dame to Kill For. I haven't really watched that one, but I've read the comic.
Well, the movie wasn't as good as the first movie, but in terms of sticking to the comics, it was kind of more accurate in a weird way.
Okay.
Like it seemed, but like it
like
was
stylistically, was it still the same as like that Frank Miller?
Yeah, very much. It was just, but it was more disjointed in that Frank Miller way, almost. Like I think A Dame to Kill For, if I remember correctly, like the movie felt like a lot more like reading the comics. Like for me,
that's
because
interesting. That's actually very interesting.
I think so, because like I haven't watched it in so long, but the original Sin City, I remember being a great movie. Like, but like feeling too coherent, whereas like if you read the Sin City books, like you piece together the world like through pieces essentially.
Because it's essentially a very noir.
Hello, like.
So they don't ever give you too much. I mean, even in the artwork, you're not given everything.
Anything. Like
you're just given like
black
negative
and white silhouettes and like yeah, I'm a big fan of like especially Sin City. Like I like Frank Miller's work. I like his writing like a lot. Yeah, Batman was pretty good.
You should check out Criminal. Criminal is brilliant.
Okay,
we've got some. I'll lend you some. It's by Ed Brubaker. He's the writer.
I know him. Yeah.
Very very good, and also very noir in the whole crime, like small crime sort of.
But that's what's cool about comics is that you can have all these different genres, and it's not just superheroes. It's not just
absolutely not. I mean, like there's some of the French comics are some of my favorites. Like,
is it like surreal stuff? Or
it's like Mobius, which is like kind of fantastical but so weird and so amazing, and then Philip Droulet, who's like also so strange and almost like occult in like, you know, how he writes and how he creates his worlds. There's people like Dan Clowes, who's like extremely either like dealing in ghost world, like with the absolute mundane, or going to the other end of the spectrum and talking about like such surreal stuff, while still trying to link it to genres that you know, so it makes it even weirder. And then, you know, you get like things like Black Sad, which is like a beautiful comic book. The artwork is absolutely stunning, and it's a crime noir, but all the characters are animals. They're very like, you know, they look like people with like, you know, they're bipedal and we've got hands and stuff. But they're like, Black Sad himself is like a cat with a little, you know, bit of white on his chin. And, you know, they deal with such interesting stories. And the great thing about comics is you have like that ability to do anything, because you don't have to worry about a huge movie budget.
No.
You just have to, all you have to worry about is...
Or can I hire someone to draw it?
Yeah, that's it. Like my friend Kerry, who does the Tech Noir...
Yeah, Tech Noir looked super dope. I didn't get it because
I'll lend you. We've got like all of his stuff.
I will eventually get it for myself because really like the look of it, really like the vibe. But yeah, I only
very
had
cyberpunk.
So much money to spend on that day.
I know. I like also had to. Normally, in the past, I've had like an actual job, so I've been able to just like blow thousands at a convention. But like now that I'm a freelancer, it's like, okay, I've got a certain
But now you get to trade, but you're still trading on your cost price and like you're still,
yeah, exactly. And also, like, honestly, I didn't take enough comics up this time. Like, next year, I'm definitely gonna get a stall.
Oh, your own stall.
Yeah.
That's cool. And I was chatting to like earlier, just saying like, obviously like the con thing must help in terms of just getting to come out of your shell a bit more.
Oh,
like,
absolutely. Like, honestly, it's been because like honestly the people that participate in these cons are so supportive and so amazing, and everyone's kind of in the same boat. Like, there's this thing called that everyone kind of talks about the imposter syndrome.
Oh god, yeah.
Where you feel like you don't actually belong there.
Yeah, 100%.
And that, I think, comes from, you know, a lot of us being from a very similar background. You know, being kind of like weirdos in high school or college or whatever.
So society in general doesn't necessarily support you and your dreams and what you do.
Yeah, but then, like, you know, you come to these cons in the first few years, yeah, you have that a bit. But then, like, as you start to, like,
Because you also see other people whose work is, like, nuts.
But, like, the cool thing is, they come to your store. Those people that you think, oh my god, they're unattainably good. They're so good. They come to your stores and they're like,
I love that. Yeah.
So there's so much support that happens in the comic book scene in South Africa at the moment. It's actually, it almost gives me goosebumps. Like, it's so beautiful because it's not like, you know, the music scene or the tattoo scene, which can come across as being a bit like intimidating, or like a little bit like, ooh, you know, people are trying to, I don't know, but
compete a bit more.
But like, people in the comic book scene are so happy that someone else has decided to like do this thing of making a comic book, that they are so supportive. And it doesn't matter if you've just released a tiny A5 5-page comic, or if you're like Daniel Hugo, who's released like tons and tons of comics and is the most amazing artist.
Yeah, like his stuff is so good. He's another one who like I'm gonna save some money for next year's con and I will buy your work. Like, just because, I mean, not that he charges a lot at all. It's just like, you know, everyone else is doing the cheap self-published stuff for like $50, $80. It's that, you know, he's got like really good books for like $250. Like, but like really good books.
I'd suggest like now they've I think compiled the sector books, if I'm not mistaken, into like one.
Have they done a compendium for it?
Yeah.
Because I saw they've got them all there. Like, I don't know if they've got them all together.
I saw on Facebook and they were thinking about doing that. And also, so I think like that might be a good way to like actually just spend a bunch of money on like something that is really worthwhile, because it's got everything in there. I'm a huge supporter of not buying like those little, like, you know, the singles. I like buying like the compiled editions of things.
See, but the singles, you know, long term will hold more value.
They might, but like they look so nice on a shelf when they've got a spine and they've got like, you know.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's just I just know that single issues, like, as time goes on, like
I'm not in it to. I mean, I've got a very, like, between Luke and I, we've got quite
I can
an
imagine you
impressive,
guys must have quite an impressive collection.
You must come over one day and see our comic book shelf.
I'd probably like with some friends I do that with their books. I'm like, oh, you got this, oh, you got this, oh, you got this. Like, I can imagine like you guys like with comic books are just gonna be like that just for an hour. Like,
we've got a very comfortable couch. You're welcome to sit on the couch and read comics. Like, we don't really lend them out, but
so how did you get into creating comics? Because like we were saying, like, you did Michaela's fine art. You didn't necessarily feel like that was for you.
When I was at Michaela's in my final year, I kind of found my feet a little bit, because like before that in my theory side I'd be doing really well, like hitting 80s, 90s, but then my practical side would be, you know, barely passing.
Well, were your lines too thick, or like, what was it?
Oh, it was just like everything about me. I don't know. I tried so hard. I was like, oh, I just don't know what to do.
There's nothing about your style that's fine art.
I know.
Nothing. And like,
Well,
I love your work, like with a passion. Like, I really, like your layer, like the one I sent you as a reference for the Heat City thing. Like, I absolutely love that. Like, and it's just so simple. Like, and it's like, I love that. I love your Avocat universes, like you know the ones that you create those big, like the one like the temple. Like that's such a cool piece, but like I can imagine that kind of line work is not what they want in fine art or like that.
I got criticized a lot for being too cartoony or you know too over exaggerated with my stuff, and like. You know, it was very disheartening, and honestly,
you're not realistic in your.
I wasn't realistic at all. I'm not a realistic. I can do it now. I've tried to perfect that because I'd worked with a jewelry design company, and I had to do hyper realistic jewelry, renditions of their rings and stuff. But back then, that wasn't what I wanted to do. What the fuck, man? Like, so it was very disheartening, and I thought about dropping out a lot, but then I was like, you know, my parents have paid so much money for me to be here. I'm gonna try to.
Also, congrats on getting in there. Like that's not easy.
Thank you. Like, no, it isn't. I don't know. Honestly, I have no idea how my entire degree went. I don't know how I got in. I don't know how. I
feel like quite a few people might feel that way after, because I've chatted to people not on this cast, but like. Even people who are doing art, you know, like not illustration, essentially, you create the difference. And like, obviously it's all art, but under those terminologies and stuff. But like, even those people who are doing art, like, Michaela's like definitely made me see my life. Like,
it deconstructs everything you think you know about everything, and then it forces you, and this is the one good thing about that place, which is like... it makes you reconstruct yourself brick by brick, like, you know, in a way that you might not be entirely comfortable with, but you need to actually address. And that, I think, was the best things about Michaela's. Like, it wasn't helping me with my practical style, because honestly, like, I felt like me just working on my own over the years really just like helped with my skills and like helped with where I was going artistically and aesthetically. But in terms of like almost a philosophical or mental kind of space, that is what Michaela's did for me. And it was tough, and honestly I really would not recommend anyone go there if you're not like really into fine art. But at the same time, I'm quite grateful.
It's also hard to know if you're into fine art at like 17, 18.
Exactly, yeah.
Fine art's a thing, I think maybe...
I feel like I should have actually probably just gone straight into graphic design, but also...
But did you worry that just sounded like a lesser degree, or what was the thing? You didn't think you were learning enough skills from it?
I don't know what it was. I think honestly, I didn't think at all about my career, and I like... My mom said, oh, there's this thing called fine art. And I looked at it and I was like, okay, cool, I'm doing that. And I applied to fine art, and like my second option was like philosophy, psychology.
Oh,
and
okay. Philosophy, yes, psychology, no. Although maybe these days that would be like psychology, yes, philosophy, no. I don't know, both will fuck you up.
Both will fuck you up, royally. But like Michaela's was I got replies from like Rhodes and from Tux and from...
So obviously your work in high school was pretty good.
It was good. It was more realistic, but it
because that's what you learn in school though as well.
It does, yeah. Well,
you get taught stuff life in school and shit.
It's very hard to actually be taught art. Like, I still can't really wrap my head around it. It's like you just look at the thing and draw it.
Well, it's giving you examples. It's someone tells you techniques. It's like
techniques, yes, and like materials, yes, and like how to use materials. But like with art, like, you have to have that interest in that, like, drive to like, oh my god, I've seen this thing and I really want to draw that. I want to like kind of recreate that in some way. Or even now that I'm also like into comics and into storytelling, it's like, oh, I just thought about this thing just before I went to sleep, and I really need to like put that down because I think that will really work.
Well, is that something that comics has taught? Well, there's something about comics that's very different to fine art, is that you have to think about a whole entire storyline. Like,
Yeah.
you have to, like, because like with fine art, you're creating one piece that, yes, it's expressing something, but like it's all there in that thing. There's no turning the page with the fine art piece. Whereas with comics, you've got to create a narrative now. You've got to not just create that, you've got to create a whole universe. You've got to create stuff that's concise. It's writing. It's a lot of it is now writing. It's not just art.
Well, going back to my time in Michaela's, and I will answer this, but like, my final piece was we had to submit a catalogue of our work, and we had to have a theory, a practical, actual artwork, and we had to have like a dissertation. My catalogue was a comic book. It was me having a discussion with my laptop in comic book form about where we came from, because my whole thing was about indentured labourers of Indian people, because I thought I needed to like actually.
I was gonna say, you don't want to bring up the POC thing.
Yeah, no, like, I thought like, okay, this will get me some firsts or whatever. It didn't, but
It didn't. That's how.
I was making cartoons. Like it wasn't.
The context
fine
was
art enough.
great. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Like, so I made this cartoon, and I was basically talking about where did you come from, computer, and my computer was replying to me, and like it was pretty funny as well.
Cool.
And I mean, it did pretty well. Like people liked it, and then my final year artwork was an animation, a 15-minute animation on like.
Good.
It was like I was trying to tie in the architecture of Grey Street, which I love.
Yeah.
With
like just that Art Deco mixed with
that Art Deco,
like
anything.
Yeah, with
like
everything, with apartheid, with like like with like German 1800 shit,
exactly.
like
and like tying it into like people that have actually written about this particular space, and like historians. I researched like and interviewed and rotoscoped historians that actually like were very invested in this space, and I made this little documentary, and I exhibited that, and like so I think
animation stuff you want to go into.
It used to be, but like to be honest, like I don't know. I don't know if I have the patience. I know most people would say
it's a lot of fucking work. God,
you don't have the patience to make a comic. But like I really do not have the patience to make an animation.
Comics are slightly less work.
Slightly less work for. But like I tap my hat to animators. They are incredible.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like that. No, like that is a level of dedication that like I can't even imagine, because there's no parts about that doesn't take time. You can't whip up a quick animation.
I was trying to like rotoscope, and like I was literally doing 30 frames a second. 30 frames.
So you've got to.
So you draw something, and then you draw it again, but slightly different. Like literally 30 of those for one second.
And then
you've got a 3-minute interview. So, I mean, like, my life in my final year at Michaela's was, like, non-existent. I did not leave my room.
Wow. It does give you, like, a big appreciation for, like, Looney Tunes. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Jeez. Those guys, I mean, those people were doing, like, hand-rendered stuff. Like, that is...
Like, every frame.
Every single frame. Like,
and just
crazy.
The writing on that stuff was also some high level stuff. No, like genuinely,
That's hilarious.
Like, like the 50s, 60s like era of Looney Tunes is like honestly just some high tier like comedy. Like I'm a big fan. Like there's actually this podcast called The Rule of Three, and Phil Jupiter. So I don't know if you know him. He's a British comic. He spoke about Chuck Lorre, who wrote a lot of the comics, wrote a lot of the scripts and stuff for.
Oh really? Chuck Lorre. I've heard that name around.
Yeah, you definitely. If it comes to Warner Bros, you would have seen a lot of his work, like a lot, like Roadrunner. And all
okay, cool.
Yeah, So Bugs
right.
Bunny was like, he did that a lot as well, and just man, like, so that's the thing, like, that's what's dope about comics is this art form. It really does, like, it's, but for you guys, I guess it's a little different because what I was gonna say, it's such a cool team experience. Like, you know, you've got the writer, you've got the illustrator, you've got the inker, you've got all of this, but you've got you.
Yeah. I don't know. Luke and I want to
Create something together.
yeah, we want to create this.
Do you really though?
No, we do. We've got like the
Are you not worried?
characters. No, I think we'd work. Do
Do you guys work well together? Like,
we do.
because you guys have a company
I
together.
mean, like we work. Well, we don't have a company together
Well, you've got a
actually,
thing
but
where you do work together.
we work from home, and he works on one side of our studio, and I work from the other
But you
side.
got the what was it?
We had the Billy and Bedevil.
Yeah. You're not doing
portrait
that at the
thing.
moment.
No, we've just got other stuff that we need to do.
Okay.
But I mean, I enjoyed doing it. But he scripted a couple of my my Avocat stuff actually.
I can imagine
Used
he's
to
good
be-
at that.
Yeah, he was amazing, and we've got an idea for a
He understands structure very well.
yes. Oh, he is like he could probably write dissertations on comics and like.
We're
you
just
know-
reading his comics, like you get, like he understands how
Oh
it
yeah,
all
he's
works.
very, very technical. And I mean, like, he gets really annoyed if people don't have, like, you know, their
Stuff in the right place.
stuff in the right place, or if you've got your speech bubbles and you don't have your text aligned inside the speech, like, that is a
fuck
huge
yes.
no-no.
I agree. Like, I agree. Like, you're like, please make it easier for me to read. Like,
Exactly, it does distract you, and sometimes you don't even realize that this is happening, but, like, anyway.
what's design and
It is design. But we have been talking about collaborating on a comic called Night Town, I think we've
I can
decided
imagine
on.
you guys would do something dark and funny.
It's it's dark and funny. It's like a crime noir, but like set in this like kind of like demon universe.
Yeah, sounds about
and,
right.
You know, like there's starlets that, you know, have gone missing or have died, and there's like a
The
PI,
noir classic.
you know, the noir, like kind of poking fun at the genre, but also kind of like, you know, it's a love letter towards the genre because we both love noir and
Yeah.
like crime noir. So that's in the works when we actually have some time. But like Luke's also got so many comics that he's producing, and I've got a lot of like both paid work and my own work, which is not necessarily paid work.
But your own work does pay off eventually, like when you sell it
It
as
does,
comics.
it
like
does.
When you
No,
get to
no.
like,
I mean, like
But
we bear in mind we've done Icon, FanCon, and Comic Con, and that's probably what we're going to do again
but
next
online
year.
stuff.
We haven't really gotten there yet. Like it's like it will happen. It's just
And I think setting up an online store is like absolutely necessary for what you do.
yeah. It's just like.
Like you guys have physical products.
I feel like I need a personal assistant so that I can like work on my thing, and then like someone can just like send out my orders. So I might actually recruit someone to do that at some point so that they can like work with my store, and you know, because at the moment it's a little bit too
You just
overwhelming.
don't have the time.
I don't have the time or energy, or I also have a 2-hour nap during the day, so that would cut into my nap time.
You know, maybe make it like an hour and a half nap, and you can send out some orders. You know, like I'm just saying, like you could increase your income.
Okay, look, I work till like very late at night, so like I need
No,
to have
I'm with
two-
you. I do the same thing some days because like I'm usually up until about 2 or 3, and then
Mhm.
get up around 8, 9ish.
Yeah,
And so an afternoon nap when you do that is very,
Yeah.
very necessary.
it just helps out. Like you've got to get enough sleep in your life.
So what's next? What are you working on at the moment?
Well, I need to. My other comic, the first comic I ever put out called The Rusty Bolt. I need to get back to that.
I've got the Rusty Bolts. Yes.
And I will expand on that universe. I've got a lot of plans for that.
Like, what's the vibe with Rusty Bolts? Like, it's like not cyberpunky, but like influenced a bit by it, or like.
You know what it was? I read a book by Mark Twain. I think it
Cool.
was called like On the Road. No, that's Jack Kerouac.
Yeah.
It was like the one where he's like kind of traveling on a train. I can't remember the name right now.
Me neither.
But I read that book on audiobook, and it was just so amazing because there's all these like old barflies that were just talking about their exaggerated experiences, and I was so fascinated by that. And I really just, because I love like going to bars and listening to the barflies, these old
like Western,
dudes, or
like
all these, yeah.
Well,
like you can even find a Western kind of story at the bar at Amsterdam or at La Bella, you know? Like you hear these stories that are so exaggerated, so extra, you know, it's fantastical. And I loved that. I fell in love with listening to these stories of these, like, because I just like go to bars in Cape Town before Luke moved down when we first moved there. Then we moved back. Thank God. And like I just go to bars and like just listen to these old ladies or old dudes, and like I found it fascinating. And that really informed the Rusty Bolt, and I was really inspired by Philip K. Dick.
oh,
I think,
nice.
and Gnosticism, which he references a lot in his books. So I think the universe will expand, but like I think Avocat probably has a better chance right now. So that's why I'm working more on Avocat, but the Rusty Bolt 2 is coming.
There was actually something, like, you kind of bring it up, and I guess we can talk about before we close this. The commercialization of all of this. Like, do you feel weird about the fact that it's now this big commercial thing, or was it always the thing? Like, people were always trying to sell comics, people were always trying to sell their art, like, you know, and for yourself, you even making those decisions now of like, well, I've got to go with Avocat, and obviously you love Avocat, but Rusty Bolt's like, you know, this thing that you also love, and you probably wish, you know, you could.
I had the time and all that.
And the time, money, everything, but you know that if you spend more time on Avocat now, like that, it'll sell more and you'll make more money.
Definitely, like, I think like that. I think of like what's going to make me the most money, and like honestly, I want to put out there like really good content that people want to actually support. So Avocat is still like, you know, very, very meaningful, and like it's good content.
Yeah, we're not talking about Avocat like Avocat sucks and it's just this thing you're doing to make
but
money. Like,
yeah, but like Avocat is probably the more marketable thing at the moment.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of creatives would probably like stone me to death right now, but like honestly, I love both my comics, but Avocat is the thing that sells, and I identify that, and I have to run with it. And when I've got like a bit of capital to support the Rusty Bolt, then I'll go back to the Rusty Bolt. And it's not because I don't like the Rusty Bolt as much.
It's just understand the market.
It's just I understand the market, and like you have to think
it's like
in a business way.
didn't sell as much as Batman. Like, it's just like it's
Exactly.
a simple thing. Like,
That's a great way of putting it.
like we know.
I'm so honored to be compared to that.
But it is like, I mean, you know, Dark Horse. Wait, they are Dark Horse, not Image. Yeah. But like, you know, eventually getting bought up by DC and stuff, you know. But like, yeah, like something like Preacher, people wouldn't even know about, like if they weren't bought out by DC eventually.
Exactly.
So like.
So yeah, like Cat's in a huge avocado-shaped Gaucrocket. Like I understand, like people, absurdism is going to like kind of trump like this weird like philosophical Gnostic kind of book that I want to write about robots, like, which is still interesting, but like, you know, you have to think about what's gonna sell.
Yeah, you're not gonna get people walking past your booth, looking at it and picking it up and going, "Yeah, that's what I want." Like,
Exactly.
Essentially, you're gonna get other people going, "This was a good book. You should pick it up."
Exactly.
And once again, like, what are the like? I mean, obviously, you're selling stuff online, but I get like the volume of stuff you sell in a con must be much higher than in a month, like a 1 month.
Oh yeah, I think South Africans are still quite. They're not really into the whole like buying online from other South Africans sort of thing. So I know
they'll
like,
buy from Amazon.
Yeah, we'll buy from Amazon and we'll buy from Take a Lot, but like, you know, if we're buying from creators, it's a little bit
Well,
like
you don't know that
sketchy.
they're gonna send it to you, like
Yeah,
you know.
but I mean,
within
like
any sort
I
of good
have,
time
and I
frame.
mean, they do. I mean, like it's these like
Yeah,
young creators who just want to like actually get their stuff out there, and they look at like the people on Instagram who are doing it and making livings off this
Yeah.
from Canada or Sweden or the US or whatever, and they want to emulate that. But at the same time, there's so many connotations that you have with the South African market.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, another thing that's prevented me from actually selling my stuff online. I do okay with cons enough to and I've also got other paid work to subsidize myself. So I'm not just only relying on my fun stuff to make a living and pay my rent. So yeah.
For now, hopefully
one day.
we'll do the actual thing.
Also, if I get my shit together and get a web store that is trustworthy to other South Africans, then maybe.
Yeah, I don't know why you and Luke don't do that. Like, it would be a good
Oh my god, can you imagine Luke, the amount of stress he'd go through just
No, you guys hire someone else to do it.
Okay, yeah, if we had to do that, maybe.
Yeah, hire someone else, let them take a decent percentage of the profits, and you get the rest. Like, you work on what you want to do.
It's probably gonna end up being my mom.
Yeah, so if anyone other than Tasmin's mom wants to do that, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is attached to your write-up of this.
Okay.
Or it's at TasBedeviled with 2 L's.
I like that you know what I put in the write-up, so you've got to check
Yeah,
that out.
I think rather do that, because there's 2 spellings for bedeviled, so...
Okay, I feel you. And then also, you've got the coolest websites in the country.
Thank you.
Tasmin.co.za.
A friend got that for me. I was like, whoa, I didn't even realize I actually have that space open. So.
Yeah, that was a good hustle. You are
Yeah.
www.tasmin.co.za. So if you want to check out Tasmin's work,
And if you want to
although
contact
you need
me,
to update it more.
I know,
please.
I am going to. I'm just this is what my future
No, I know what it's like. You've got the stuff that makes you money and all the other things that you actually have to do. That updating stuff, gets
but
picked
no,
on the
it is very important. So I will get to it. So
yeah. And any cons coming up? Anything else happening?
FanCon for sure.
When's FanCon?
That is, I think,
That's
in
early in the
June. No, June, July, because there's
That's early in the year for me.
there's Comic-Con Cape Town that's
that's
happening.
probably March, isn't it?
It's kind of not FanCon.
It's March or May. It's one of the M's.
Yeah, I think at the end of March, April, I think it's
Okay.
somewhere around there. So they've taken the slot of FanCon, and FanCon has moved to June, July or something.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. Flying to Cape Town is quite expensive, so I don't know if I can do both of the trips. But I'd love to if I could, because I'd love to be part of the first Comic-Con Cape Town. But
Does
the next con,
does Cape Town have more of a scene for comics?
they do, and I guess
For
they
creators,
do. There's
maybe.
a lot of creators in Cape Town, and they're very interesting. It's a very interesting space, and there's also a lot of support for local comics. Every single time I've sold stuff at a FanCon, there's been Clark's or various bookstores that have come and bought 8 or 10
Actual bookstores.
Yeah, and they buy stuff not on consignment.
Not even consignment. That's awesome.
It's a really, really great deal. So they buy 8 or 10 at a time.
Because I can imagine you give stuff a consignment, it comes back all buckled and fucked up.
Yeah, consignment isn't a vibe.
No.
I don't fuck with that shit.
Yeah. Oh, cool. So people can find you at the cons, they can find you online.
And if you do really want something shipped to you, please just let me know and I will make a plan.
Or your assistant will make a plan.
Or my assistant, my future assistant.
Your future assistant will make
It's
a plan.
probably going to be my mom.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks,
This has
Bob.
been great.
Yeah. Thanks.